Last night, I sat with ayahuasca for the third time, and it was just the absolutely most incredible experience that I've ever known. Words go a short way in describing it, but I want to explain what I felt and what I saw and what happened for me. So, consciousness is something that I've always pondered, and in pondering consciousness, there is a point that you reach where intellectual comprehension can no longer satisfy the craving of knowing, the craving for knowing that our soul has. The only thing that can satisfy it is experience. So for me, I've wanted to actually know what it means to feel God, to be with God, to touch spirit, to be embraced by spirit. I've wanted to know what life is, like what life really means, like what is life? What is the whole point of this charade? What is the whole point of this game? Because when you study the facts, it becomes very quickly clear that our interpretation of life is simply an interpretation. There is no reality to it. It's just our own experience, and it's with interpretation and without a complete understanding, being able to comprehend the completeness of everything, our own personal perspectives are illusions. The only way to experience reality is to experience all of it at once. And that's what happened for me. The whole thing, the whole of reality, I had a moment where, the moment before the ceremony really started, or before the visioning started, I should say, when we were drinking the medicine, I was trying to understand what I'm doing. Like the medicine, like I said, I've worked in this timeline with ayahuasca 3 times, and the past 2 times that I worked with ayahuasca, I didn't receive any visions. So this time I was adamant about having a vision. So I had basically twice the amount that I normally have. And I got to a point where I just figured, ayahuasca doesn't work for me. Because it was like maybe 2 hours and nothing happened. And then I felt myself rising into the experience. And it's so gradual. And reality just starts breaking down. It just starts breaking down. Like what I perceive as reality, the limits that I have projected onto reality disappear. And things can be seen for what they really are. And everything becomes really vivid, and the experience all happens within one space. This is hard to explain. It happens within me, but not me, my consciousness. All of the sounds, all of the feelings, all of the sense, they all happen within this kind of astral space that's not with my body. And as this is happening, I'm experiencing different sensations and different awarenesses, and so many different things happened. And what I realized was that I was in the middle of the true experience of life, like without time. Just the pure, real experience of life. And there was just a moment of intense beauty, profound beauty, just like indescribable bliss, true bliss, like nirvana, like an orgasm times infinity. And in that moment, I realized that my life was ending. And that was a death experience, like where the death experience is such a beautiful happening, and it's an act of surrender where we literally are remembering the life that we chose to live this time around. So the death experience is actually the life is the memory of the life experience. Wow. And I realized that wherever I actually was, like what I am now is just an illusion. Wherever I actually was in that moment, I died. And that was a different timeline than this one. But that Kashai died. And I let go, and I surrendered, and I let go of my life. And I felt myself easing into the process, and my breath slowed down. And finally I took this last profound breath that was just like a breath that I've never felt before. Like I just breathed in the whole of the universe, and I breathed out, and instead of dying, creation began. The whole of creation began. And I was born. Like creation began on a universal level, but I was in that moment was also born as a baby. And so many things are happening at once because the concept of time is completely out the window. The concept of reality is completely out the window. It's not linear anymore. Everything is possible in these moments. And I'm this baby, and I'm waking up in the hospital crying. And I'm also feeling my daughter waking up in her birth experience crying. And I'm remembering her, and I'm realizing that I literally chose every aspect of her to be my daughter. And all of these different concepts that I've dabbled with in my mind intellectually are becoming real, and I'm literally experiencing all of these concepts that I've talked about over the years. So at a certain point, my level of consciousness raised again beyond the plane of Kashai, but with the identification of Kashai to see, so that I could remember in this timeline what I needed to remember from that experience. But what I realized is that I and all of us are literally the choice of God. And more than that, we are literally God. God, in its completeness, chooses amongst this massive, endless, infinite chaos of creation. The power of God is choice, and God itself chose to be Kashai in its fullness, not an aspect of God like we talk about so often. Like, the completeness of God chose to be me and experience as me. And in that moment, I experienced such a great surrender, and I just let go again. I actually had I had about 8 death experiences in that moment. But yeah, I realized that all of these trials that I put myself through, trying to be something and have a purpose in life and to make a name for myself or something like that, or to be this thing or that thing, I, like Kashai, I don't need to do any of that, because God chose to be Kashai. So, like, who am I to choose that what I want to be is different than what God is, like, than what God chose me to be? And God chose me to be me, with the family that I have, the parents that I have, and God meaning me. Like, I chose this as God to be me. And in that moment, I just made peace with everything and everybody that I've ever had an issue with, and I just felt these moments of closeness with all of these different people, and I just chose to embrace each of them and comfort them and love them and just give them all the love that I am here to give. And in this moment, I'm still very present to, in that moment, I was still very present to choice. And there was a point where I woke up in the first ayahuasca ceremony that I did in September, when I thought that I didn't get any visions, and I realized that I actually was in that ceremony having a vision, and this vision was that vision. And at the same time, this reality that I'm in, that I chose to be in as Kashai now, that experience was a memory of this timeline. And I just got it, like, I got everything. Like, this whole thing is really an illusion, and everything is happening at once, And choice is absolute. Like, we can choose anything. Absolutely anything. Like, as God, choice is literally endless, and we can do and be anything. But as God, we chose to be the person that we are. And we funnel that divine energy into this life as a perfect being. Perfect. No matter what you look like, no matter what you think, no matter what thoughts you have, you are literally perfect. You are literally God manifested to experience this life. And of all the infinite choices that are available to God, as God, you chose to be you. And I chose to be me. And I accepted in that moment that I am Kashai. I chose to be Kashai. I chose to be me with all of the challenges that I face as me, with all of the struggles and self-esteem issues and worthiness issues and seeking higher levels of consciousness and seeking a better life. I surrendered all of that and just decided to be perfectly Kashai. No more fighting. No more frustration. No more forcing myself to be what I think is acceptable. I'm just me. And I think that this is the point. And in the moment when I chose to be me, I actually was present to choosing any different version of me that I wanted to be. Like, I could have been baby Kashai. I could have been dying Kashai. I could have been Kashai in September in the other ayahuasca ceremony. I could have been Kashai who had struggled over the past 6 months with all of the different challenges in my life. And I chose to be me right now. I chose to be me. And in that instant that I chose, I started to come down gradually. And at every point that I chose more, I came back and back and back. And I realized that I wasn't having an ayahuasca vision, dude. Like, there was this synchronous moment where everything that has ever happened in my life happened in that moment. And I was so lucky to experience all of it. So, with great gratitude and love, I leave this message for all of those who have been seeking, who have felt unloved, disconnected, who've questioned if God is real, those who've lost everything, those who experience heartache and suffering and pain. You really are perfect. You really are the intention of the universe to be you. Exactly who you are. You. Struggles, all of it. That greatest, grandest expanse of reality is you. And as that, you chose to be the individual that you are. Feel it. Feel that in your heart. Let these words resonate with your soul. And remember who you really are. Peace and many blessings.